Gaming reviews done quick. We've got our speed shoes on for the 1 minute rundown. I'm Octrinity, your host, and I do what Nintendo don't, at least when it's convenient. This time we're running down part 1 of Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic's another series with tons of games, so this time I'll focus on when he was still in 2 dimensions and still on console. Of course, Sonic is Sega's mascot, designed specifically to compete with Mario. He can be commonly seen running really fast, hanging out with his animal pals, eating chili dogs, running really fast, and destroying robots, especially those created by Dr. Eggman or Robotnik or whatever his name is now. Sonic dies in one hit unless he's holding onto any rings, in which case he'll just drop what he's holding. Oh yeah, and we mentioned he's really fast, right? See, for a long time, that level of speed was pretty much his main selling point, along with landscapes that look more fitting for a roller coaster, and single-handedly brought the Genesis into competition with the Super NES. Let's see why as we review 8 games from his past. Ready? It's been almost 25 years since this game first came out, and even looking at it from a modern perspective, it shouldn't take you long to understand why this made Sega a name to remember. The level of speed this game can reach is fast even by today's standards, though admittedly fast enough that reflex alone will not save you from a few cheap hits. For that matter, there are several levels where high speed isn't really possible, and some towards the end where it's fairly easy to run headfirst into a bottomless pit or other death trap. That certainly doesn't mean the levels aren't enjoyable, though. They're still in line with other platforming games. That said, what the game doesn't get enough credit for is that the levels are so large that nearly all of them have multiple routes through them, many of which have their own pros and cons, and many are so large it's easy to get lost in. And for those seeking additional challenges, there's a side goal of collecting the Chaos Emeralds through bonus stages. Overall, this is a game that seems to relish in simplicity, so I have a feeling players who started later in the series may find this one a bit oversimplified. But that doesn't mean it's not worth playing, and still gets a thumbs up from me. As far as sequels go, this didn't feel a need to change much. What it's best known for is a new character in the form of Tails, a sidekick who shadows Sonic, for better or worse. What it, for some reason, isn't known for, since people forget it wasn't in the first game, is a new spin dash ability, allowing Sonic to build up speed in place. What it should be known for is some better level design that lends itself better to running really fast, and changing out level themes much faster since it's only 2 acts per zone instead of 3, improving the pace of the game, but to be fair, not all the levels are winners. And Chaos Emeralds moved from that one thing you're collecting for 100% completion to that thing you're collecting to unleash Sonic's ultimate borderline game-breaking form. In all things considered, just about everything has improved over the first game. Levels are more exciting, game challenges a little more difficult but better balanced. There's still a lot of hidden stuff you won't notice your first few tries at the game. I'm not as crazy about the bonus game used to get those Chaos Emeralds, but that's pretty minor in the grand scheme of things, so cliche as this is going to sound, if you liked Sonic 1, you'll love Sonic 2. Sega's CD didn't catch on that well, so this was considered a rarity in the Sonic library for a while, which is a bit of a shame since it's a fan favorite amongst those who played it. It's also a bit of a divergence from Sonic 2, feeling more like an alternate sequel to Sonic 1, which actually isn't that far from the development history since they split into 2 smaller teams after the first game. This has a time travel element to it, with each level broken into past, present, and future version, with the maps changing a little on each. There's a side mission on each level to destroy a robot generator somewhere in the past, which in turn means it never populated in the future, and adds a lot of nice extras to it, and destroying all of these is necessary for the best ending. The levels are a step up from Sonic 1, but it does feel like they reuse the same themes, almost in the same order. The bosses seem like a departure from before, most of which just involve trying to figure out how to actually hit him instead of requiring much reflex. I was actually a little surprised to learn how many people consider this Sonic's magnum opus. I mean, it's a great game, but I kind of liked how it progressed from Sonic 2 better, but should you play it? Definitely. Sonic curls into a ball, and most of these games have something resembling a pinball level, so the idea of making an entire game out of that concept isn't hard to imagine. Making a good game out of that shouldn't be hard either, but this one is pretty average. Wait, pretty average? Is that better or worse than just average? That doesn't matter. You've still got sequential levels, which are far bigger than any actual pinball table you'd find, usually having upwards of 4 sets of flippers. Usually you're looking to hit enough targets to advance to the next tier, grabbing all the emeralds before the boss room is unlocked. Yet actually reaching these seems like it can be an exercise in frustration, since many of them require extremely precise timing and occasionally have segments where it's not clear what you should be doing. Sonic's movement also feels incredibly stiff, especially when you're in non-pinball mode working from a flat surface. He can't even run and jump at the same time. Considering there's some precision platforming later on and every other Sonic game has pretty precise control, that's hard to ignore. Honestly, this is one of those games I want to like more just because the idea is pretty good, but each time I try, I come away from it disappointed. I'm going to break my own rules and do both of these together as a longer segment. They're separate games, but run on exactly the same game mechanics, differing just in levels, characters, and a few mid-level bonus games. It's fairly well known in the fandom that these were meant to be released as a single game until it was determined to be too cost-prohibitive to do that. Instead, Sonic & Knuckles got released later with the ability to lock on to Sonic 3, which gets a nice combined package where one game essentially becomes the sequel to another, as well as adding a few other bonuses for the sake of the completionism of this. It also makes for a nice point of reference for how later games ended up, since you have the three characters everybody remembers. Sonic is still the fast one, and he has some extra mid-air skill for each of the three elemental shields. Tails, of course, can fly and swim, so he'll probably end up taking different routes through stages. Knuckles gets slightly different maps than the other two, pretty much forcing him through those different routes, but he can climb, glide, and instantly break through walls. It also feels like where the series started using its fast speed more creatively, even though a fair amount of that is essentially the game on autopilot just showing off. Levels are usually bigger, longer, and more difficult, but keeping to their multiple paths and strong in variety, even on the first and second act of the same zone. Now each level has a boss, and aside from a couple that just tend to drag from having few opportunities to actually hit them, they work out well. Neither game really seems superior to the other. It's probably going to come down to whichever has levels you like best, and for that reason I'm giving a slight edge to Sonic & Knuckles, but really these two games are meant to be enjoyed together, and whose only drawback doing that is that the first level of the second game feels like a breather level by comparison, and I couldn't justify the game losing points over that. This is my pick for where Sonic and Friends hit their peak, and if you've played any of the other games but missed this one, see to it around that you get around to playing them. Both of them. The game I most want to compare this to is New Super Mario Bros. Much like that, this feels like an attempt to jumpstart the franchise as it used to be, more than a decade later with a graphical overhaul and some extra skills and design cues taken from later in the franchise. In this case, the homing attack from later games is included. But unlike that, it feels like this game is instead stuck in the past without trying to move it forward. Levels and bosses seem like half the time they're lifted straight from the older games, and I think the older games did it better, all because of the game engine. Sonic feels like it takes too much time to gain momentum, and the camera feels way too close, which feels sinful considering there's times where it's actually a more appropriate distance. Admittedly, though, the other half of the time they do quite well. I was pretty pleased with the second half of this game. Each zone is split into 4 levels, the last of which is a short run up to the boss, and they're better at differentiating themselves than most of the other games I've covered so far. As a throwback, it's not bad, except by comparison to a different throwback we'll cover in a later episode. But as a complete game, I'm left a little let down. Sonic 4 had a second episode to it, with enough game design changes that it doesn't make sense for me to do one combined review like before, and this one's definitely the better episode. Tails joins the fun again, now offering some team abilities, and now that I see how these work, I feel like the earlier games are missing something by not including them. That said, as helpful as they are, and even as required as they are in some parts, there are other level segments that feel cheapened because of them, as if they didn't consider how strong they could be. The level design is more interesting and less copied from previous games, though still clearly having its tributes to older games, and adds a few collectibles for anyone looking for extra challenge. The bosses are more interesting as well, generally avoiding recycling from previous games as well. And if you got Episode 1, you'll get a surprising new character in the form of Metal Sonic, though he doesn't play that much differently and reuses level concept and segments from the first episode. But the game engine, while not identical to before, still has a lot of the same issues, especially with not being able to see enough, and I haven't warmed up to it yet. Still worth checking out for those who enjoy old school Sonic but want something different. And that's all for Sonic's classic history, but then again, some of his 3D outings revert back to this classic style too, and there's enough handheld Sonic games running on similar designs that could make an episode full of just them. Sonic also appears in a lot of other game genres too, occasionally showing up in some racing or party games, among others. Sonic's games are easy to find, with most being downloadable on modern systems or in a collection on a little bit older systems, and several others still easy to find secondhand. The Sonic fanbase has a rivalry going with Mario, seeing as they were in some intense competition back in the 90s. But nowadays the rivalry has gotten more friendly, and I could easily see a fan of one series enjoying the other, especially now that they've appeared in the same game a few times. And hey, pretty sure I found what I was looking for.
The producer!
Welcome, Octrinity. I'm happy you made it.
You are? You were expecting me?
Well, yeah. You announced you were doing this last episode. I mean, I do watch these.
Oh. Right. So. You know why I'm here then, don't you?
Yes. But really, what do you think you can do? You can augment your skills to fit the games you're reviewing, but I'll always be stronger. Given how easy it was for me to kill you before, even you know that. You can make a good argument, and that's it. So you know what? I'll give you one episode to pull this off, and I'm confident enough that I'll even let you pick.
Hang on. I can make a good argument. I got it! Check back soon for the next 1 minute rundown, where we'll talk about a game series where a good argument can inflict physical pain. See you then.
Now, I was thinking tacos or Italian.
I'm more feeling Italian myself.
Okay, I know a place.
Alright. Make a good fettuccine alfredo? No?
Yeah.
Alright.
1 card, 2.
Yeah, 1 card's easier.